Good morning, good evening, and good night. Well, to everyone out there on the internet, whether you're listening onto the podcast or on the watching on YouTube, this is Lancing with Myself, the 5-minute weekly podcast where I, Steve D, talk to you about being a freelance game designer and creative when you're low on spoons and low on cash. This week, I want to talk to you about post-production, and this sort of hit me as a blindside because, it's new to me. As I keep saying, when I've said back and beating the path, every day, every time you do a project, you go a little bit further. Now, post-production is a term that comes out of computer design and also film originally. In all those cases, you have pre-production, you have production, you have post-production. And we don't always talk about that in board games, but we really, really should, because it's the same process. Pre-production, the thing about pre-production is actually design for game design. That's when you're actually building the game and making it work. And we sort of think that that's the hard part, and that's the bit where all our focus goes, especially if we're designer types. But if you intend to put your game out there, you need to understand post-production as well. And the computer game people have got a leg up on us because they understand this and we don't. And we need to. So let's think about how it would be if this, in terms of that model, pre-production, production, post-production. Pre-production is really where 99% of the design process happens. That's where you design things. Because production is actually making the game. That's where you start going, right, we need art, we need layout, we need proper testing to make sure everything's clear, we need blind play testing, we need an idea of the audience. That's all production. Now that is still sort of tacked onto the loop, but all your play testing before that, all your design, all your fixing mistakes, making things work, balance, all of that's pre-production, right? Production is actually producing the actual prototype and then going into printing and publication and those kind of things. Even if it's online, that's all production. And then there's post-production, which is the art of getting your game to people. And that is really the hardest thing. Like, that's something that I've really struggled with because it took me a lot of work just to become a game designer. Then having to figure out this mysterious art of putting my games in people's hands, that has been a huge struggle for me. And originally I would just throw them on the internet because I used to call it the art bucket. I think I've used that phrase before. It's just like I completed it, goes in the art bucket, it's done. It can go on a wall. And for a lot of us artists, that's the process. Like creating the artwork, how dare you say that there's more, I put my life and soul into this. I put the thing on the painting. I put the, I'll deem maybe to hang it on a wall or put a frame around it for production, but don't talk to me about post-production, right? Post-production is not something that I want to talk about because I've done my art. But if you want an audience, and we all do, then you have to think about post-production. What happens after you've made it? Like I'm in the moment right now where I am putting games in packages and taking them to the post office, and it's exhausting and it's hard work. And I look back on my notes and I think I kind of really finished my run on Relics about 2 years ago. About just as we were sort of getting ready to plan out the Kickstarter, I was like, you know what, I'm pretty much done. And that was still at the end of pre-production. Like I hadn't even got into production. I tipped the edge there. And it was about 3 years of pre-production before that. It's a big, big project. And then there was another year of production and a year of post-production. But I find myself now, I'm exhausted. I don't want to do interviews anymore. I don't want to do press. I don't want to do publications. I don't want to buy ads and marketing. But now when the game is actually coming out, that's when we have to do that. That's when post-production matters. I have to do interviews. I have to work out distribution deals. I have to get it into reviews. I have to get it into stores. I have to get it into people's hands, arrange events. And I've got nothing left because I didn't save any energy left for post-production. And that's the lesson I've learned on Relics is that, long projects not only are extensive and long and take a huge amount out of you, but you've got to be prepared to put the middle point, not in the middle point of like making the game, but in production, because there's so much more to come. The bigger the project, the bigger the post-production. So that's something to really need to think about. If you are exhausted just in pre-production, you might be working a bit too hard on this project. It might be too big because you haven't just left enough energy for you to produce it and to do post-production. So as you're making your games, think about that process. Think about what you've got left, what the production's going to be like, what the post-production's going to look like, and see if you can leave some energy and some time for that. And if you can't, maybe think about reducing your scope a bit on that pre-production, because you need all those steps. If you want your game out and you want people to play it, you need every single step. Excuse me. Last time we talked about small before big. Reduce that first step of pre-production because you've got so much else still to come. That's the terrible truth about post-production. I'll talk to you next time. Until then, be good, play games, pat dogs, have fun.